I think your culture is generally the worst behavior you will tolerate.
That's Roxanne Petraeus, co-founder and CEO of Athena, the compliance platform trusted by Netflix, Zendesk, and Figma. She's an Army veteran, McKinsey alum, and she built a company that people don't leave by refusing to say anything she won't back up with action.
It becomes very tempting to talk yourself into a candidate or talk yourself into changing your standards. Always the wrong move. We've absolutely turned down candidates who passed everything else and failed the values interview. I think hiring people who generally have the perspective that it's all my fault is really important. Every company that we would consult with, they all want to be more innovative. Everyone wants to be more innovative. And then someone makes a mistake and the whole org freaks out. And it's like, well, you can't have both. Like, so, you kind of got to pick. I was in the Army and senior officers would say, I have an open door policy. And I never believed them. I only believed what I saw.
But how do you build a culture where somebody can go to the founder and say, oh my gosh, Roxanne, that is not the brightest idea you've had this week? Roxanne, I am a huge fan, and I am so grateful to be spending this time with you.
Thank you. This is really fun.
Yes. So good. And I've just read so many incredible things about your story and how you've got to be here as the founder of Athena. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun for our audience today.
I hope so. That's the goal. Yeah.
So our whole purpose today is we're kind of going to look at the relationship between the CEO and your head of people and talk about how culture transforms inside of that relationship. And so I'm curious if you could kind of go back to your early career self when you first started in this concept and really kind of talk about anything you wish you could have known then from what you know now.
Definitely. So I started the company Athena about 6 years ago. And I feel like I'm generally not like when I look back, I'm not a change things, like I think you have to go through and learn and grow. And so I don't have a ton of like regrets but I think one of the many things I probably would tell like early me about company building, one of them is like very simple as an idea, but it's hard in practice, which is like the people make the company. There's sort of, there's really like nothing outside of the people. And so where that shows up is things like really holding the line on hiring, for example. Like, everyone told me this, but then when you get in those really busy moments where you're like, we're behind, we need 3 more people yesterday, it becomes a little bit, it becomes very tempting to kind of talk yourself into a candidate or talk yourself into changing your standards, and like always the wrong move. I think the flip side of that is like finding the right person, like a person with very high agency who can just get stuff done. They're like worth their weight in gold, and they're just so it's like wild how sort of a small group of people just create like disproportionate value and impact. And so really kind of finding those people, and then also recognizing that not everyone comes in like looking like that. Meaning, for example, when Melanie, our wonderful chief people officer, joined us, she didn't, she had never really posted on LinkedIn aside from sharing a job board. She was, kind of maybe on the quieter side, never done any conferences or speaking or anything like that. And also didn't have this big, corpus of work about her perspective on company building and culture and all of that. And she just kind of like flew, like one of those people who just like right environment and really like bloomed and like hasn't hit her ceiling. And I think that it's really neat to be able to sometimes I think we're starting a company, you think I have to find the right people, but sometimes like, you can grow them internally as well.
That's awesome. So if I just kind of recap, you would go back and say hiring really matters. You would say that you need I think of that term kind of as athletes. They're really strong at just executing. You can kind of throw them in the deep end of the pool and they will figure out how to swim or find a preserver. And then sometimes to really get talent, you just nurture them and they can become outstanding. You don't really know at the time of hire where they're going to end up, but given the right environment and the right space and the right leadership, they really can flourish.
Definitely. And then I think on the flip side of that is always being really honest with yourself and your team on like when people aren't flourishing. Like it's, you always hope for the Melanie story, but like, it's no one's fault, but like that is not always the answer, and having like a really disciplined approach to, okay, what's happening when it's not working.
Right. Yeah. So hire slow, but make changes quickly if you're not seeing
Yep.
it go.
Yeah, I'd say like hire methodically. Just like sometimes, the right person is the first candidate who comes in and lucky you and no problem. But I think making sure that you kind of hold that discipline. So for us, for example, we instituted a while back founder interviews, and we still do that for every new hire. Myself or my co-founder will be part of the interview process, no matter how junior, no matter what role. And that's not because she and I are the only people at the company who can uphold that bar. But we think it's really important to like signal through our own time that like, yes, I'm going to be interviewing a junior SDR, and like making sure that the rest of the team has like held that bar, because it's so tempting when you're that hiring manager, you're drowning, you need that person to kind of occasionally just be like, I don't know, maybe. And like having that internal check and balance of like maybe is not,
For sure, for sure. Maybe is not our standard. That is a great line. So can we go through and can you really walk me through then how you've designed the hiring process so that maybe is not the standard?
yeah. It has been incredibly iterative. Like I'm sure if we rolled back the clock 5 years or something, our hiring process was loosey goosey, if I'm being honest. So when Melanie came in, and I think she was like employee plus or minus 25, so a bit earlier
That
than
is
most.
early because most times I would not advise a CHRO hire at 25.
Totally, and she wasn't a CHRO, hire or a chief people officer, but you're exactly right that like a head of people, I think in a different company, like really isn't necessary that early. The reason we did it is, especially at the time, Athena sold very heavily into people leaders, yeah, and into the enterprise, and so we thought it would be important for us to kind of have that voice of the customer like internally. And then, of course, there were, people things that were popping up. My co-founder and I are obsessed with a couple of books. One is The Advantage by Patrick Lencioni, which is like a Bible.
We've had a lot of Pat Lencioni fans on
I
this
mean, it's just
show.
like really good stuff,
It's really good.
it ages well, and I think the concepts are very simple and they're just hard to operationalize. And so, and then my co-founder and I have also been long obsessives of Netflix's internal culture, just
We
like
were just talking about Reed Hotman's.
I think
Such a
it's
great example.
their stuff is so good, and they really
Hastings,
live it.
Hastings.
Reed Hastings, yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
thanks,
Hoffman.
sorry.
I didn't even catch it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like definitely a Reed.
Yes.
And so we thought like, well, we would definitely like welcome the opportunity to up our sort of culture game. But yes, you're exactly right that if someone was like, should I hire a people leader? I'm 25 employees. I would be like, mostly not.
Okay, so I have so many questions. We're in the context of hiring. You brought Melanie in at 25 to really design the process. And so, what do you think people should take away from how you've designed it? And say, if I'm designing my process for the first time, or it's been loosey goosey, I want to bring more discipline to it. What would you advise that they do to get to this outcome that you've created?
Yeah, I mean, I think like everything in some ways is like very simple in theory and then hard to operationalize. So the simple in theory is like start with your company values and what you're trying to do. So we have four of them, and now I'm terrified that I'm not going to be able to name all them. Okay, humor is human. We have an excellence value. I was going to grab coffee right before this. I'm going to think of the other two, and I will be
I
very
read
glad.
them, and I know I'm in the same
Play
place.
to win, humor is human. Oh my goodness, this is deeply embarrassing. You can keep this in because this is a very we have a joke about I will come in strong opinions loosely held, and I'll come in with a really strong perspective, and the next day someone will be like, Roxanne, you were arguing for this point, and I'm like, I have no memory of that. Which I think is actually really helpful because you don't get attached to things like you don't have this emotional connection to your point. You're just sort of like, but point is you would start with your values and kind of ask like, okay, what are we designing for? Who are the people who need to who are we looking for who like fit these values? So for us, the play to win one in particular was important for hiring because that is the maybe isn't cutting it, like we're really looking for excellence. And then design a hiring process that optimizes for that, recognizing that there's no such thing, I believe, as a perfect hiring process. Like, and I think there are real diminishing returns to adding steps and steps and steps to it. Like, at the end of the day, it's a leap of faith, like a marriage, like anything. You sort of like do all your due diligence, and you're just like, I love my husband, it's worked out great. But you get the idea.
But I do think it is what you speak to in this, which I do love, is a level of bidirectional commitment.
Totally.
inside that leap of faith. And you're giving as much as you can to say, are both parties willing to commit based on what we know today?
Yes, and I think that, for us, for example, like, we added the founder interview, we added a values interview, so we have someone in the, company who's kind of trained in asking questions around our values. We've absolutely, turned down candidates who passed everything else and failed the values interview, and I think that's really important because otherwise, like, what are you doing?
Are they pre-qualified on technical skills before they get to this point?
They are, and so it can be painful because you're like, the person was really good. It's like, well, don't have a values interview if you don't want to make a decision based on it. So I think that's been the right move.
And then just for reference too, how many current team members do you have?
We're at about, call it 60.
60. So
Yeah.
still at 60 because I feel like all founders start inside the process. And then it gets to a point where other things are happening in the business. Founder has to go do other things. How do you not hold up the hiring process because of your other responsibilities as a co-founder?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that the mistakes we have made in this are thinking that hiring isn't our number one priority and like pulling ourselves away from it. Like when I, kind of look back at the company and I see moments where we got it wrong, it was that because it's so tempting. You're so busy, a million things going on to just be like, okay, let's just like let it. I don't have time to be in this interview or whatever it is. And I think it's just always the wrong move. And like fast forward to age of AI, where now we're really seeing that our phenomenal employees, I mean, they're just like flying. Like it feels like um, a really, really good employee with the magic of AI is now, like occasionally it feels like they are worth like 10 of their role. Like they're just so good.
Well, and the justification has to be there because hiring a bot is really inexpensive compared to hiring a human. So you have to make sure, even more so today, that you are making the best choice you can.
Yeah, because you're looking for an employee who can manage the bots, can manage themselves. Like, I think so much of the AI discussion can feel really dystopian, and I totally see how it can get there. But I think that like, at least my perspective on how Athena has approached this has been like really positive of saying, one, like we know that for the vast majority of employees, Athena won't be the last place they work. I would love for them, to be here for as long as they are excited and growing and contributing. But we totally recognize that, like, you will, spread your wings and find an opportunity. So one of the things we're telling our team is like, we are going to set you up for success both here and in your next job because you are going to be screwed if you do not know how to use these tools. And so lucky you, you're at a company where we are giving you all of them. Like if any employee wants any AI tool, all they have to do is raise their hand in a channel and they will get that AI tool. They can get like specific training on it. And so we're really kind of highlighting that there's something that's in it for us, the company, which is now like our CS team is vibe coding implementation dashboards. And like they don't need to beg, borrow, and steal anymore. And they can now just like spend time on calls and they're not doing any of the manual follow up. And so we get, as a company, get something, but the employee gets something too, which is they can go and tell their next employer, yeah, I know exactly how to use this tool. Here's a thing I did with it.
I love that you're saying this, and I just want to double down on it. I lead a CEO mastermind, and we've had this discussion: is it our responsibility to make every team member AI native? And we've really pushed to say yes, it is. And
Yes,
all
it
of
is
these
the people
companies,
leaders or the
the
CEOs.
CEOs
Oh, yeah.
have taken it on and said, we want, just like you, to make sure they have all of the tools because we feel like because of where AI is going, it's like almost a contribution to society. It's a commitment to something bigger. And I love that you're going here. And I really, for other CEOs listening to this, I think it's a really valuable perspective to have at this time.
It's incredible. I mean, it just, I truly feel like I'll pop onto Slack every morning and just see something someone did where I'm like, how did they do that? Like, and so I think it's incredible, but I also think as a tech company, it would be almost ridiculous to be like, what do you like? We're a tech company except for not that tech. Like, come on. So yeah, no, I have been that. Melanie and I have talked about this a bit. I definitely didn't like flawlessly execute our AI approach. I think some of the conversation can sound very like threatening almost. And I think that's hard because I'm a big proponent of being really honest about both upside and downside, So like, for example, in hiring, we often ask a question of senior leaders, if this doesn't work out, why? why do you think? So like, let's say you join and 6 months in, it's not working out. What's your,
Such a good
and it's a
question.
brutal question, and I get it because it's again to the marriage analogy or something. It's like we get divorced. Like, what would be the reason? It's a bit of a. I think it can be a bit of a downer of a question, but I think it's really important because there are really like challenging moments, and instead of pretending that's not too true, sweeping it under the rug, sort of using those more like corporate speak of like, well, the alignment just isn't there, and you're like, what do you like?
You're not a culture
Yeah,
fit.
like, I think it's just much better to be really honest about, like, "Hey, we're a company that does part ways with people if they're not meeting our high standards, and, like, we just wanna be really clear about that so there's no confusion, and, like, where do you think we might have, problems?" I think it tests for self-awareness and kind of gives them a really fair understanding of the company they're joining. So if someone doesn't like that question, it's like we're probably like not the right company for you. And I would much rather them know that, even just like for their own ability to make a really smart choice.
I'm so proud that you're saying that. This is another takeaway I'd love CEOs to have. I feel like post-COVID, everybody wanted a peanut butter spread culture. I'm like,
Hmm.
we are all things to all
Yeah,
people.
yeah,
And I do believe back to like a Jim Collins term or even a Pat Lencioni term, we are cult-like.
yeah, yeah,
Athena is
exactly. Yeah,
cult-like, and there is
yeah.
the standard that you have that is uniquely yours, and you want to attract people that find value in that. Not everybody will, and that's okay.
100%. I mean, another big perspective we have is we are remote first. And I get that people have incredibly hot takes in all directions. And I do not care because I run my company and my company, we are remote first. And so we're like really clear about that. And we're clear about the why. And so we attract people who love that. It tends to be a lot of parents, a lot of people who, for a variety of reasons, like they really thrive in an environment where they can kind of like run on their tasks and they're very autonomous. And I would totally get if someone was like, "Look, this is my first job, and like I'm really looking for that in-office experience." Be like, "Amazing, you should go find that." It's just like we, Athena, are not going to be, everything to everyone.
Yeah. Okay, there's 100 things I wanna double down on. Okay, we're still in the context of the things you would have known. Hiring is one, we've done a good deep dive on that. The second one that is new to this show that we haven't talked about that I really find value in are athlete hires. And people always say that they wanna do this, and it ends up blowing up for the high performer as well as the company often. How have you done this?
Can you
What
define athlete hire? Because I feel like everyone has a slightly different.
different terms.
Yeah.
So what I heard you say, so
Yeah.
tell me if I
Hmm.
captured this right, is you like people that are kind of can thrive in anything. You throw, they'll catch, they'll deliver and serve back up. It looks like instead of you pulling out of them, they are pushing to you.
Yes, 100%.
Okay.
Yes, I was in the army, so and I love CrossFit and weightlifting and stuff, so I
Thank you
love
for your
athletes. So
service.
thank you.
I love weightlifting too.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
just my co-founder does not, and so it's a running joke between us of I love athlete hire. She loves them too, just not with that term. But yeah, I mean, I think so one of the reasons I love athlete hires is actually the feedback. They're just like that is another of our values, embrace feedback.
Yes,
I'm
and you
gonna
have
get off
feedback
for it,
Fridays.
before we have feedback
I want to hear
Fridays.
about that too. Yes.
And so we have this embrace feedback value, and that's not just like feedback is good. It's like you must embrace it. And I think great athletes like Serena Williams has a coach, because you can be the best tennis player in the entire world, and there's still something that you messed up in every play that a good coach, can point out to you. And I think that the best people I've ever worked with, I joke that they're like little LLMs always learning.
Oh my gosh, that's great. I love
Yeah,
that.
like we have this one salesperson, and she's just like flying, and she wasn't a traditional salesperson but got into the role. And I'm very bad at giving positive feedback, not because I don't see it, but it's just
I am
it's
too.
like it's really hard. I have like a
Really work
Slack,
at
I mean,
it.
sticky note reminding me of it. It's still very hard.
What does the sticky note say?
Say something positive. It's just so hard. Again, not
Where do
because
you
I don't
keep
see
it?
it, just on my like Notion, it's like at the
I
top.
love that.
Because I appreciate feedback that I can like action. I tend to give more of the like, hey, and so for this woman, I watched a sales call, hadn't given her positive feedback in a while, and then saw a thing that she could have done better. And it was just like the most classic athlete approach where she was like, hold on, I need to watch the clip. She watched the clip, exactly what I was talking about on the sales call. And she was like, oh, yep, I see it. Makes sense. Here's what I could have done differently. Appreciate it. And like moved on. You're like, oh, like you will just keep growing because there was no like, well, the thing you didn't see is this and that. And then it left me with the impression of like, I would love to give you feedback 5 more times a day because this interaction was so pleasant for me. Like, you did not make it difficult. And that's not to say I'm looking for doormats. I think like maybe another key part of Athena's culture. So you have like a lot of people who tell me that I'm a dum dum occasionally, which I think is great because like, I have 10 ideas a day. I think a couple of them are great and like most of them are bad. Like, and hiring athletes, like, I think means that you'll have people who will just kind of like happily tell you that you were wrong. It's that balance because you want people to be open to feedback, but also have strong perspectives. And I think sometimes people can confuse one for the other, but I have loved having people who kind of spike on both.
It's really important. You did a post on LinkedIn, I think last week, where somebody didn't tell you that your AirPods were not optimized
Okay,
for sound.
ironically, this was literally the same woman, the salesperson, yes, and it's like the classic, like, the person who will take feedback will also tell you when you were wrong, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, but how do you build a culture where somebody can go to the founder and say, "Oh my gosh, Roxanne, that is not the brightest idea you've had this week," right? In a way, like, how does that happen? Because so many people, I love that post because being a chief people officer, I would have to build a team that wasn't afraid of my reaction. And it was really through they tell me that I'm dumb, and I'm like, "It's okay. I realize that was a dumb idea."
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
have to feel it, otherwise they won't believe it's true.
100%. I was in the army and sometimes, like senior officers would say, I have an open door policy. And never believed them. I only believed what I saw, So like people would say, I have an open door policy. And like, you do not have an open door policy. And so I think the same thing is true of building a feedback culture or even a speak up culture, right? Because the same people who will tell you your AirPods are not not working are the people who will tell you like I think that this employee is like acting inappropriately. I think, like that's a really hard thing to say. So I think the only way you build it is through continuous essentially like feedback, meaning every time an employee comes to me and says your AirPods aren't working or this was a dumb idea, I try, do not always succeed to like take a breath, kind of thank the employee, show them that I'm taking it seriously. So I think another thing that people really don't love is giving feedback to the CEO and then the CEO being like, yep, thank you. And that doesn't mean I'm actioning it, but often what I'll do, like I had a big disagreement with our head of product. He is incredibly smart. He's made a bunch of great decisions, but I disagreed with him on one recently. And I tried, I'm not sure if I succeeded, you'd have to ask him, but to show him like I really heard you. And here's why I'm still going in the other direction, but I want you to know like I listened to your points, and kind of like showing that through action versus that feeling of like you didn't listen, you didn't read the memo carefully, you didn't even sort of like pause to consider. Because I think that you build the muscle through just like continuous actions versus any slogan or value or something like that.
It's true, that makes me think of something else I read about you where you take a very "it's always my fault." And is that something you learned from being in the Army? Is that something you've adopted? And how does that play into your culture and your CHRO relationship, chief people officer relationship?
Yeah, totally. I think I stole the exact phrasing from Andy Dunn. He was the founder of Bonobos, wrote this incredible book, Burn Memo. He's an angel investor in Athena, and I think very highly of him. I think he had a article about like being a leader is everything is your fault, and the army definitely has kind of a version of this as well. And I think it's really important because, like, I've had a couple of great executive coaches over the years, and usually what will happen is some version of like a roll into exec coaching, and I'm like, I'll just take my co-founder as an example. I'm like, Anne is really bothering me. Anne does not bother me; she's flawless. But, and like, oh my goodness, she just like is always negative Nancying this and that, and I'm so frustrated. And a really good executive coach is like, okay, well, that seems like a you problem because like you're tolerating it, you're not taking any, I'm not hearing any like action steps. So like ultimately you think you're upset with Anne, but you're upset with yourself um for like dealing with this situation. And I think hiring people who generally have the perspective that it's all my fault is really important. Something I do in interviews to test for this in small ways is I'll just like always ask about current company, previous company, and what I'm looking for is anyone who complains about their previous employers in a certain way, I think is like really telling. And I get that there are difficult bosses. I mean, I have my fair share of stories. Like I'm not saying that that there aren't reasons to be frustrated, but I think it says a lot about how someone communicates their frustrations as to whether they think about like the agency they have in situations. And so I'm typically looking for people who have positive things to say about places that they have worked, and are showing a high degree of agency of recognizing like if you're at a place that is not great for you, like, make a move. Yeah. And this is like the type of thing that gets you yelled at on LinkedIn, because I get that there are situations where it's not that easy. But I have found it is easier to just take this absolute approach of like everything is my fault and I can fix stuff, in my professional life. And therefore, like, it's on me if I'm not.
I totally agree with you. I've had an executive coach for years, and we've also worked through that. And it was really hard to recognize of like, I've created this. I'm becoming a victim of it or a
Yeah.
martyr of it.
Yes.
And to really own that is changing, because at the same time as a leader, it can be our fault and you still may disagree with your head of product.
Yeah.
And so where like, or is there a time when you and Melanie have disagreed? And so it is, how do you, I guess my question I'm kind of formulating on the fly here, you're taking sole ownership, ultimate accountability, yet you still don't see the same way.
Definitely. And I think it's hard because, like, I'm the CEO, so everything rolls up to me. Whereas, for example, an area Melanie and I disagreed on is I am very pro back channeling candidates.
I am too.
Yeah, okay,
I
yeah.
get probably a call a quarter on
I'm
somebody. Yeah.
I'm shocked when people don't sometimes. I'm just like, man, that's a wild move. And Melanie did not like this, and she had very logical reasons for it around back channels can be very biased. There's all sorts of biases that can seep into that, which is incredibly true. You don't want to over rely on one data point. But but I think on this one, something Melanie has said that she appreciated is at least I didn't sideline her or gaslight her. So I was like, Melanie, I am back channeling, and like, you can know about it or not, but like I'm not gonna tell you that I'm not gonna do this, and then use my phone, and because I totally could, right? I could tell her like, great point, we're not back channeling, and I could just back channel. And so I was like, I'm doing this. And then, through conversations, Melanie either got bought in or got worn down. Not sure which one. I think bought in, but either way,
You can
we
still disagree and commit.
well, that's where we got to. But I think from her telling that she did eventually agree, in particular for senior candidates, that she just felt like, okay, you've kind of got a like corpus of work and people, and if we cannot find one person who has a positive thing to say about you, like, this may have, they had plenty of opportunities to and so instead, then Melanie kind of took the approach of like, okay, Roxanne's gonna do this. What's a way that she can do it that like mitigates some of my concerns? And I think the point that maybe is different between a CEO and anyone else at the company is like, if the back channeling backfired, that wouldn't have been Melanie's fault, right? Because she was like, this wasn't my idea. Like, but you can't have mutiny at the company where everyone can do everything they want. Like, you do need to have some like unified approach to things. And so I think that what I've heard Melanie speak to is the idea of, as a people leader, you kind of need to decide if on balance you're good with your company, your leadership, versus thinking that you are going to agree with every last detail. And if you find yourself sort of at the place where you just like at your core kind of disagree with the direction of the company, the leadership, the culture, the ethics, then it's time to find a new role, or to just kind of like make peace with it. And you say like, this is a salary and I'm not loving it, but I've made a decision. But I think you kind of have to do like one of two ways, because of course, and this is why Melanie and I agree that like I'm in charge of culture. It would be really unfair for me to say, Melanie, you're in charge of culture, but I'm gonna back channel. I'm gonna mess around with your comp plans. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do that. And it's like, well, is she really in charge of culture? And so, I think being honest about about who has the authority.
This is the heart. Like, this is the core of all of the issues. But what I want to just like detail this, because what I hear you saying, which is how I've operated with my CEO partners, is outwardly facing. Even if we disagree and we commit, I am backing you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right?
That's
I'm
very important.
backing you to the outside. You and I might come together in this room on we're always recording and say like, "Hey, I don't support it. I'm going to back you outside, but you and I have to figure out how we're going to work through this and decide if we're really committed to this relationship going forward." Like that is the upright, direct way to have these conversations.
100%. Melanie had to make some decision about WeWork benefits. I don't remember what it was. But I think she was announcing it at a leadership meeting, and there were some grumbles because she was like rolling back a perk. And so understandably, VPs are like, great, now I get to have, my employees grumble at me. And I just said, like, Melanie had a really hard decision. And like, none of you would have wanted to be in her spot, so like knock it off, some version of like
Totally.
me just kind of backing. As sometimes an analogy I use is like Melanie has to pick the restaurant, but we all have different perspectives, and so like do not bring your like whining to her about it. Like
Yeah.
it's not a fun role to be in when you have to balance competing priorities and just like recognize that maybe like about half the people are going to be grumpy at any given decision. And so I think that that is something that a CEO can do to back up the people leader when the people leader has to be the messenger of a change that people don't love.
It is a great way to be an ally, and also to the decisions that we make around performance and compensation and all of those things. Having this alignment is critical.
Yeah,
Otherwise, it will also break down the executive team, and I think that's also important. You can't go to the CFO and be like, "My chief people officer is off rails on this."
totally.
I can't go to the head of sales and say, "My CEO is off rails."
Yeah.
Like, that will divide a management team like
It's
no
very
other.
bad. It's like toxic, is politics. Like I've really liked that I would much prefer kind of like let's just sort of fight out in the open versus a feeling of like,
Yes, closed
oh,
door.
yeah, like Melanie and Roxanne are buddies over here. And so if I don't get Melanie on board, then I can't. It's just like that is not the company that I want to work at.
I agree.
We know every day that culture really trumps all. We have our mission values there on Nectar, and we have a mission committee of our board. And, that's kind of soft. How do you really measure that you're meeting that mission? What's been great for those board members is for us to take in some of the charts and reports from Nectar, and we see what values are being acknowledged. I think the engagement has improved in that we are filling positions. The word of mouth that we have in the community that we can define and acknowledge through Nectar is making a difference.
Okay, let's take a little diversion.
Yeah.
Let's talk compliance.
Everyone's favorite topic. Yeah.
Everybody's favorite client.
Yeah.
So I've long been known for saying I don't do compliance,
Yeah.
even if it's a chief people officer.
Yeah.
And I really want you to teach me on this because it's not that I don't see compliance as important.
Yeah.
I feel like to make compliance effective inside of a values driven culture, you need your people leaders to know when to raise the flag.
Mm-hmm.
Yet they can't know, especially,
Yeah.
at one point I had 2,000 people in 12 countries. I was, and I had them in all 50 states.
Yeah.
I couldn't keep track. So I was like,
Yeah.
my job and your job is to raise the flag, and then we will go get help from our experts.
Yeah.
Give me feedback
Yeah.
on how I could have done that better and how you see it, because I know you've said that compliance is really culture with documentation.
Yeah.
Talk me through a better way to handle it.
Well, I mean, I think that approach may have been right, but I think that compliance as a word, just is like almost by definition box checky, and I think culture is sort of something that people kind of get is this like living, breathing thing. And so I think when companies really get their approach to compliance right, they're just thinking about it from a culture perspective. So, you know, um, I think your culture is generally, I've heard it described as the worst behavior you will tolerate.
I love that
Which,
definition.
yeah, like I think is really accurate. And so, that means if you're the type of company who, if you're a great salesperson, even if you're not very ethical and not very inclusive. Hey, you're a great salesperson. We're going to like keep you on. Like that's your culture. And your culture can also have these like nice flowery values on the posters, but that's not, everyone knows, that it's what you do and not what you say. I think so much of running a company and being a parent are basically the
The
exact
same.
same thing. Like
I
it's
feel that
really
way
not
too.
like, not that great of a distinction, between the two. And so I think when it comes to compliance, it's kind of a similar approach of like, okay, break it down. So for example, for a lot of tech companies, their data is super important. Their customers' data, like you have this, you know a ton about other companies and they're entrusting you with that data. And so you can have an approach to like data privacy compliance that's just like, hey guys, you need to check the box, but you know what, use whatever AI models you want, like be loud at restaurants talking about your deals, like do whatever you want
This
because
is huge right now.
totally. I mean, like, sometimes I even hear CEOs of products that I use, and when I hear them on podcasts talking about their approach to data, I'm like, I don't feel
Ooh.
like doesn't make me feel great, like,
No.
and so I think that instead, I remember talking to a compliance leader at one of the dating apps that was specifically for LGBTQ. And he said something like, "Hey, we have data that could literally get someone hurt, depending on what country or kill the country they're in." And so when I talk about data privacy at our company, I talk about that and how like the data we have is so important and so sensitive, and it is really important for us to be good stewards of it. And I thought that was a great example of compliance done right. Right, where you make it, like, specific. So, like, why does it matter to your company? And the answer is, like, if it really doesn't, then, like, I don't know, probably don't be doing the window dressing and just move on to something else. But I would argue that for almost every company, the sort of, like, do the right thing, so that's your, like, code of conduct kind of stuff. Be good stewards of your company's information and finances, and then be, like, inclusive and thoughtful, which tends to be also the kind of stuff that keeps you out of HR investigations and, sort of actions regarding harassment and discrimination. Like, I don't know. I think I'd be hard pressed to think of a company for whom they shouldn't be doing those things. And so I think that's like what compliance done right is. You just make those things specific so that that junior salesperson, that junior engineer can understand, like, okay, what do you want me to do with this information?
And again, that can tie back into your mission.
Totally.
Because if you're a junior salesperson or you're an executive member that's never been bit by a loud comms crisis,
Mm,
you won't understand what you're playing with.
yeah.
So, how between the chief people officer and the CEO, if the CEO just hasn't been bit yet and so they're not taking it as seriously as they need to,
Yeah.
how do I make that case in a way that lands for my CFO and my CEO
Yeah.
to say, we really need a product like Athena to do this for us. I need this oversight
Yeah.
because I didn't feel like I was reporting to it at management team meetings. I felt my job was really to be a deflector shield
Yeah.
with my partners in legal and finance, and we would surround the CEO, and I would only bring it up if I felt like we were at a breach for something very public to
Yep.
our reputation
Yep.
or for somebody that was connected to CEO in a different way so it would touch them.
Yep.
Otherwise, it was really handled outside.
Yeah.
So help me see how I could be better there.
Totally. So I think in general, when you're trying to convince somebody, you like using their language and what they care about is the move, right? And so if you're trying to convince your CEO that like, hey, we don't do any harassment prevention training, and like, I know that we exist in states where it's required. I know that the cost of not doing it is really extreme. I think, think about what your CEO cares about, and what they care about probably isn't state regulations because they're like, I don't know, what's the worst that can happen. But what they probably do care about is attracting and retaining great talent. What they care about is the articles that show up, in the press about them. And you're right that I think fear mongering doesn't help, especially when it's kind of like very unlikely, like depending on how big you are. And maybe this goes to sort of like be strategic, pick your battles. But when you're at a certain size, like, um, yes, like this will you will absolutely have an HR investigation. Like, it's just a given. There's not, this isn't hypothetical at that point. And so then, I think thinking about like, who your audience is and what they care about. The CFO cares about how much all those HR investigations are going to cost. And, like there's like, real dollars and cents that you can, assign to all of this. And so I think it would be just a sort of like mapping of your key stakeholders, a recognition of what they care about, and then tying what you want to what they want. this is kind of a smaller example, but we work with a ton of really large companies, like 50,000 plus employees. And one of the biggest things on everyone's mind right now is like age of efficiency, running lean teams, having everybody oriented toward the mission. And so a lot of our compliance buyers want to run really sophisticated training programs where the data privacy training for the salesperson is specific to them, and the data privacy training to the engineer is specific to them. So it's like role and risk based, which is absolutely the right way to do training. Because when you just talk to everybody, you're like, I don't know, I'm an HR person. Like, what do you want me to take away from data privacy? And it's like, what I want you to take away is, everyone's salary and social security number. And so, like, I want you to be super thoughtful about that. That's really different than your CSMs who know,
Totally different.
But if you're just,
Okay, I just have to double down
yeah,
because this is huge. Role and risk.
totally.
It's not peanut butter spread.
Yes.
It has to be applicable to their role so they buy in and they see their impact to it.
Totally.
Yeah.
And the scenarios need to look and feel like, oh yeah, that's my day. I'm on customer calls.
That's right.
So I totally see how, this would show up. And so our compliance buyers are like, oh, I'm really excited about role and risk-based training. A CEO does not care about role and risk-based
No.
training in an abstract. They're like, I don't know, that sounds like something that I don't care about. But what
And
they
it's not
do-
a bad way. Like when you say that, I don't want people to think that the CEO's role on that is diminishing your value.
Yeah.
Because I've also seen CHROs and chief people officers be martyrs and victims or justifying. Do you know how much time I'm spending on compliance? Do you know what I'm saving you?
Yeah.
That's that victim mentality that we don't need to bring to the table.
Totally.
So it's
instead kind of like a high agency of like, it's not personal, but I had actually people officer when I was just starting Athena doing sales, and I can't remember what their company did. I think it was like some cool mobility scooter, I don't know, something. And she was like, no offense, but I don't care about your product. I care about my product. And I was like, that actually is really helpful feedback because that makes sense. Like your job is not to care about what I care about. Your job is to care about what you care about. And I think when you accept that, you don't take it as personally when you're like, why don't you care about my little project? It's like, well, that's not their job. But what they do care about is reduced seat time. So they really hate that everyone's spending 6 hours on training. And so the way I've seen really successful compliance and people leaders pitch this is they don't talk about role and risk based, and they talk about we're going to save everyone 55% seat time. We're going from 6 hours to 3 hours.
and more customer time, more sales time.
Exactly. Like they just put a dollar on it. They're like, average salary at this company is this. Here's what it spits out. And then they get a big old thumbs up back because they have pitched what they want, which is role and risk-based training in a way that the CFO or the CEO or the general counsel or whomever kind of holds the keys to the kingdom, they care about that way. And so, it's just like really kind of reframing.
Yep.
You're like, sometimes you hear words, you're like,
You're in
"Is
the
that
target.
what you care about into what who are sometimes I think I'm like in a video game, and you're like navigating, and you're like, all right, what does this boss care about? And like you kind of like find
so
in your bag of
true.
tricks.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is such a great visual. Such a great visual.
Yeah.
So some people that sell HR tech are tech companies that sell HR tech. What I hear from you is you demonstrate the power of your product inside Athena.
Yeah. 100%.
Can you share a little bit about how you make sure that you are walking the talk?
It's really hard because I think it, like anything, it requires kind of constant like tending, this isn't like a one and done. But what comes to mind recently is obviously we've been rolling out a ton of internal AI tools. It's been incredible. And our head of engineering could have just said, here, everybody, here's Claude, here's this, here's that, connectors, go nuts. And instead he put together this like really smart and thoughtful training on what different types of data you might have access to depending on your role at Athena and which systems that can and can't go into, and all of the controls that he's put in to like, mitigate that. But of course, there's humans. And so this is why he wants you to like understand that, if you're Melanie, you can use this tool for that thing, but, anyone else can't, etc. And it was such a good way to really show, not tell that, because like this is, VP of engineering, he's got important big things to do. And it said he was kind of explaining to us how like, the enterprise license we have for this model, like doesn't train on blah, blah, blah. And so that's why it's okay for the CS team to use it, that sort of thing. And I think it was just a great show, don't tell of, in this case, Matt, like, really not just like phoning in his version of compliance and saying like, no, we're taking this really seriously.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was
That's
pretty cool.
amazing.
And it was fun too.
I love it. Yeah. Okay, real quick, so we have more time.
Yeah.
Talk about Feedback Fridays and why
Mm.
it matters and how you do it.
Yes. And I'm going to start with I've been a bit of a hypocrite because my schedule has been a little bit nutty for the past quarter or so, and I have slacked on that. And I say that because I
This
think
is
it really
amazing.
matters.
This is accountability, though.
It's accountability. Because I think that, like, any of our people who are watching this, I don't know, I just think it's better to be honest about where you fall short and don't. However, I take the concepts into my one-on-ones. So what Feedback Fridays are is bi-directional. So if Melanie and I were having Feedback Friday and I was more on it than I am, she would have to fill in something for each box that's essentially like what is something that Roxanne did well, could have improved upon, and then the same for the team. What's something that's going well with the team, like, and she can interpret that broadly. It could be a whole company, it could be her team, whatever. And I think one of the key points of it is that there is negative constructive feedback that you like have to put in. So it can't just be like, give 3 pieces of feedback. Cause I think when it's 3 pieces of feedback, you're like, I don't know, should 2 of them be positive? Should 3 of them be positive? And instead making dedicated space for, your direct reports to tell you something that you could have done better every week, destigmatizes that your AirPods aren't working on Zoom kind of moment of like, and I think what I have seen, again, when I'm more diligent on it, is it's usually this like early release, like pressure valve kind of thing of like someone was sitting on something and then they like roll into Feedback Friday and you can kind of see usually the shorter and more generic it is, the more, like they're about to open up, it might just be something like point from last week. And I'm like, oh, that's like they were sitting on that one. And like, but I think because it is this expectation that you need to bring me something that I could have done better, it surfaces whatever is like number one in the queue there versus waiting for an employee to feel comfortable enough to kind of find the right moment. I mean, to my point, like senior leaders are very busy. And so it is very intimidating to have to say, like, can I take 5 minutes out of your super busy schedule to tell you this thing that you
Oh,
screwed up
that's
on,
the
right?
piece.
Like,
That's the piece. You're creating the space.
exactly. And the expectation. And so like I've had, folks who report to me who maybe like a couple weeks in a row didn't have anything constructive for me. And, I kind of dig in and say like, there was something, come on. Like, I'm expecting you to have something to say here.
That's incredible. One term I like using is, what do you see that I could do better or different?
Yeah.
To like open it up.
Yes.
And then we can start rolling and be like, okay, tell me more. Tell me more. How bad did I suck at this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
And I like that it's weekly too, because you don't let too much time pass. Right.
Correct. Yeah. I think that sometimes when they're quarterly, you feel like you need to summarize the person's whole quarter. And I'm like, and to my point, like I can barely remember what I had for breakfast. Like the idea that I'm sort of remembering something that you could improve upon, like even 2 weeks ago is a stretch. What I do try to take from that is giving both positive, though I am bad at it, and constructive feedback in the moment. So that's the example of like, coming off of a sales call and kind of just saying like, all right, I noticed a couple things, and to the point of athletes, you'll always notice something. Like I'm like hard pressed to think of any stretch of time where there's not one thing the person could have done better. It's like I'm not buying that.
Yeah. It's great.
Yeah.
Okay, our 2 final questions for every guest we have. The first is a question from our last CEO.
Yeah.
And he wants to know, what's the most important asset you hold in your organization?
Ooh. I mean, like, can I do like people generally? Like, is
Yeah.
that okay? Yeah.
You can do
'Cause-
whatever you want.
Yeah, I mean, I've just been like in particular with AI really like amplifying everybody. I've just been so impressed with the like creativity and like cleverness of some of our employees who you give them a couple of tools, and of course previously mostly I see the folks who are not engineers, and so I think AI is really magical for non-technical people because it takes you from zero, to
I finally will do the work I never wanted to do because of my cowork.
It's nuts. Yeah, I'm a cowork obsessive. It's really fun to just be like, never in my life would I have been like, I'm gonna build an app, and now you're like, wow, that's a thing you can do. Yeah, and so I would just 100% believe that like having these really intelligent, motivated, clever people who are just kind of like tinkerers, figuring out like and always trying to optimize and be a little bit better is like absolutely Athena's best asset, like by far.
Amazing. Do you have a question for our next interview?
This is kind of a hard one, but like, what is a decision you regret, or a decision that like weighs very heavily, that's something that was maybe like unmade or unresolved? Again, I know it's like that's kind of a hard one. So if that is too hard, I'm happy to find an easier
Do
one.
you
But
have one? Now I'm like, what is yours?
oh gosh, oh man, that's like totally fair of you to do. Decision is okay, so I in the overthink or underthink, my risk is always underthinking. Like, I am a ready, fire, aim, and my co-founder is incredibly methodical, and so that is great.
What a great match.
Yes. You need both. And so usually the
It's
decisions
kind of
that
ironic with the army background, but
yeah, although I think like the army has these. I always mess up this phrase, but it's like decision executed violently today is better than I don't know,
oh,
something perfect tomorrow. Something like
yeah, yeah.
to the effect of like, I don't know, if you're not sure what to do, just like do something and you'll figure
Right.
it out. And so usually the decisions that I get, I always make a decision, so I don't really have any like unmade. But often when I regret it or sort of think on it, I think I posted on LinkedIn a couple weeks ago. I had a situation where I needed to make like a bit of a personnel change, and I made it in a bit of a like, okay, we're all sort of hearing this at the same time. Could have been a little more thoughtful, a little bit more like, rolled out the comms a little bit less like intensely, so people aren't just like, oh, okay, I'm, hearing about this right now. Like all together could have been a little bit more concerted in my approach. So my oopses are usually in that direction of more like I made a decision, but could have been more thoughtful in the execution of it, or like the decision was wrong and I, needed to sit with it, get more feedback. Like, we've had situations where maybe we went aggressively trying to expand our market and it was a little too early and didn't get it right, like those sorts of things.
You know what? I feel like, and you probably have this with your co-founder, but when I get that way, I always have the one person I call just to be like, double check me, because I'm similar to you. I'm just like, go, go, go.
Yeah.
And I just sometimes I'm like, okay, what am I missing
Yeah.
before we go?
Yeah. I think that's fair. And then I also just kind of believe that you know, every company when I was at McKinsey, for example, that we would consult with, they all want to be more innovative. Everyone wants to be more innovative. And then someone makes a mistake and the whole org freaks out. And it's like, well, you can't have both. Like,
true.
so, you kind of got to pick. And so I think that I would rather be at this like innovative learning culture, which does mean that like I'm in no way immune to the whole like making mistakes kind of thing. And I think leaders often say some version of I mean, to go back to Netflix, like, and I think they really live it of we want to give people like freedom and autonomy and then hold them responsible and accountable for their actions. And that means that we don't expect perfection, but we expect like learning. You can't be like making a terrible decision all the time. That's not how it works. I think similarly, holding yourself to the same standard, but then like allowing the same grace of like, of course I made a poor decision. I made like 50 decisions that day. And like one of them, wasn't executed well. And I can learn from that. It's not an excuse, but not beating yourself up, I think is really important because
Takes
like
practice.
totally. And like even Serena Williams misses shots. Like there's not, I think like holding yourself to some version of perfection causes people to like slow down, to not be ambitious enough, because if you're only trying to do things that you can execute perfectly, I think you're not like pushing yourself.
Definitely. All right, final question.
Yeah.
Do you have a culture crush, somebody you admire who does it in a really great way?
I mean, Netflix is coming out. Like, I think pretty clear they're, I would say, like, far and away my culture crush. I think they're just like so innovative, and I've like seen this in talking to folks who are there, and also consuming their book and culture deck and stuff like that. So I would say that they're probably like very high on the list. I just love coming from the army. I think the army does a lot of things right, but understandably, it can't really give everyone like freedom and autonomy. Like it's not. It is an organization that needs to be more of a safety culture, and that makes complete sense for what the army does. But I think I have learned that I really thrive in, a place where I can take swings and I can bring on people who are ambitious and want to try. And so I think that's why their kind of culture of this, giving people a lot of freedom and autonomy, and then just like holding them accountable, like both of those have really spoke to my soul. Melanie has had to hear my Netflix fangirl miss more times than she would like.
It's a good one. I've
Yeah.
been a Netflix fangirl for a long time too.
It's just like can't argue with success.
So, Roxanne, you've talked a lot about hypocrisy and why it's important to walk the talk inside of your own organization. Why is that for you?
Definitely. So I think it is Paul English, the kayak founder. But tell me if you can fact check this. He said something people will be interested in charisma, but will like follow authenticity and I think that there's really something there around like we are building a generational business. Like I want Athena to be thriving in 20 years, not a flash in the pan. And so we really need people who are inspired by this mission and kind of like want to go on this journey with us for as long as they want to be on the bus. And I think that those types of people have an expectation that they want their leaders to be honest and like walk the walk. And that's who they want to kind of like follow. We built the company, and it feels like every year or so there's been some macro crisis. So started a couple of months before COVID, and then it was like everything in 2020. Then you have political cycles, and you have tech corrections, Silicon Valley Bank. Now it's AI. Like
It just hasn't stopped.
it really like it just feels like it kind of hasn't. And we have had incredible employee retention throughout that period. I think our average tenure is something like 4 years. I mean, it's
It's
like
incredible
pretty
right now because it's just dropping massively everywhere.
100%. And that's still while maintaining a really high bar for employees, right? This is not like we uphold that standard, and that means we have to part ways with folks. I think the reason we're able to do this and what, people will tell me is that through all of those crises or even like, internal moments at the company, I've always been very clear about what's happening. So when it was Silicon Valley Bank or something, I'd be like, guys, this absolutely affects us. Like, this is not great. And here's what I'm doing about it. And there's nothing you can do right now, but I'm going to like communicate. I think on that one, we would say something like, all right, we're going to communicate, every 6 hours. So like every 6 hours, you're going to hear from me, and you might just hear, I have no update, but it kind of gives that sense of like, okay, I think my dad is an airline pilot, and I think about the best pilots are ones who kind of communicate what's happening to the plane, because you're
It's so
just like,
true.
right, you're just
Yes.
sitting in your seat.
We're
and
going
you're
through
like,
turbulence right now.
we're going through turbulence. There's a maintenance issue, and I don't know how long it's going to take. Here's my best guess. I'm going to talk to you every 10 minutes. And you're just like, great, I can chill out now because I like know what's happening. And I think that the best people can smell BS from a mile away. And also like, Kenley, I am kind of the same person here as I am as a parent, as I am, and I just like don't have the energy or interest to like cultivate multiple personas. Like it's just too hard to like remember, like, okay, I'm trying to put on this front for this group, and it's just too challenging. And so I've like found that it has been much easier to kind of build Athena around like this company culture that I want to work at. And that tends to be this like, sort of internal interest in a lot of honesty, clarity, high bar. And then humor, one of our values that I did forget of humor is humor is human. Because like, we ask people to give a lot at work. And I think if it sucks, like you just don't want to be there and you don't want to give your best work. And so creating this culture that I think has like kept really good people and has like candidly kept my own interest and ambition and drive has just been I think one of the privileges of building your own company is you can build it to be the type of place that you want to show up and work at.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You
Thank
bet.
you for sharing. It's true. It's way easier. I think being moms, I don't mean to generalize, but for me
Yeah.
too, like what you see, what you get. Like I'm like this way at home and this way at work. It's all I'm giving to you.
I know, totally, and I think it also like then makes me feel like as a mom, I'm not like my kids get to watch me work, and my colleagues get to see me parent, and I think that there's something that can be really like special about blending those and kind of taking the I mean, I learned so much from my like parenting my kids that I can occasionally bring into work and vice versa.
I'm doing
Yeah.
these posts right now, what
Yeah.
I learned in 7th grade, because my 13-year-old is in 7th grade. And I'm
Yeah.
like, wow, all this transcribes right into leadership today.
Oh my goodness, it is wild
It's
how
middle school.
it's totally like perceptive and thoughtful, and sometimes even if I'm frustrated, I'll be like, to my oldest, like, okay, like I had kind of a rough day. Like, what do you think I should do? And he'll be like, well, like, did you do your best? I'm like, I did do my best. And you're like, okay.
Oh,
And it's
okay.
just like, boy, like I feel better, So
Oh,
yeah, so
amazing.
so I think there's just like a real wisdom in that childlike curiosity.
That's so true. What a great way to end. Thank you so much again for being
You
with
bet.
us.
This was really fun.
So
Thanks.
fun. Thanks.